Hello there, tarot lovers. Happy new moon to you all. We've got a 4-card reading, and this is a 4-card reading that I just did a few minutes ago. So today I'm going to wing it and see what comes through as far as a message is concerned, and hopefully it's not too chaotic and somewhat comprehensive in nature, even though it's going to be wonderfully made up on the spot. So we've got 4 cards, the header or the primary card being this King of Swords, followed by 2 reversals, and the reversed Page of Pentacles and the reversed Hanged Man. And the last card finishing this reading would be the 2 of Pentacles. So let's dive into this little story and see if we can't make up a story that seems to be a little bit relatable and something that you can maybe use as positive guidance for whatever might be going on in your life. So whatever is going on in our life, the King of Swords will always represent that part of our awareness or that part of our personality that knows what our truth is and knows what is important, knows how to communicate what our truth is, knows how to stand up for the beliefs that we feel are valid, honest, worthy, as well as being able to cut out the ideas and the programs and the beliefs that maybe are outdated, maybe aren't valid for us anymore. And he uses his sword in a point in the direction sort of way as much as a cut out the crap sort of way. And so the king asks us if we are conscious of what our higher truth is, or what we are here to communicate to both ourselves and the world, because this is in essence what our truth is. This is the intellect king. So we're talking about ideas that would hopefully be easy to, or at least we are able to communicate and voice and verbalize in some sort of way, but definitely put words to. In other words, not just have an etheric idea in your head, but be able to articulate that idea in some sort of format. The king sits on his throne of air, being quite flexible on one front but rigid on another, and that duality that sits in the world of swords is very precise, as in he's flexible on some fronts but not flexible on others. He knows the truth in general, but he's willing to bend his mind according to what is important in the moment, and he's willing to shift and change his mind, which doesn't invalidate the truth that came before, the truth that might come afterwards, but is pertinent to who we are in this present moment. So he brings up that question. What are we all about? What am I all about? What are my primary messages to this world and to myself? If I was to give one bit of advice to the world, if I was to share one truth that I thought would actually, be useful for the world, if I was to be honest and recognize that there's one belief that I do definitely live my life by, what would that be? And am I communicating that or sharing that in the best way possible? Am I being a little bit righteous in that way? The king is quite righteous. He's strong and he's upright, but his sword is slightly off to the side. He's not rigid like the queen. It's interesting. He's that inner truth that the queen represents, but then projected into the outside world, that needs to come out with flexibility. We need to be able to execute or to convey the same beliefs. We need to live them out in the same ideas in a multitude of different ways so that different people can hear them. Some people aren't willing to hear some words, other people aren't willing to hear some ideas. Some people aren't willing to use, certain vocabulary, and other people are. Some people are just not going to be ready, and that's the time to shut up. They're not open to hear. We don't need to share. Not bad, not wrong, not better, not worse. Just we need to know when to speak and when not to speak. When our communication is just by holding a stillness or conveying an acceptance instead of trying to push an ideology. Let's talk about how this king relates to all the other cards, because that's probably where this reading comes out and comes in, makes a little bit more maybe practical sense. So we've got the Page of Pentacles reversed and the Hangman. Let's look at them both in a brief moment. And we'll see that the Page of Pentacles is that childlike innocence, or that inner part of ourself that is reversed usually because of fear, and there's a fear of action resulting in inaction. Usually there's a fear of saying yes to experiences resulting in hesitancy, resulting in a certain amount of withdrawal or self-doubt, and a certain amount of, I'm not sure if this is the right choice, or if this is the right opportunity, the right option. And we feel that our childlike fears or our childlike insecurities might very well manifest as doubting our truth and putting our truth into action, because the Pentacle world is all about action. And you've got this reverse Hanged Man here, who is also a little bit hesitant in this in his reverse nature. When I say hesitant, this is not a card of action anyway. This is a card of holding an opposing perspective to what we normally would. What that means is the Hangman is hanging upside down, seeing life upside down, seeing our world upside down, and yet completely at peace with it. We're not usually at peace with an upside down perspective of who we are. We're not usually at peace with paradox. We're not usually at peace with the differences, with the opposing nature of life. We're not usually capable to hold two perspectives at one time. What I mean by that is, for example, if we were to jump into the esoteric, we're not really very good at being human and being spirit at the same time. We're not good at identifying with my individual self and my ego and my personality and the person I call me, Marcus, and at the same time being a soul that's connected to the infinite, that doesn't need to be confined by this specific and individual physical form. I can jump into one, maybe get glimpses of it, in a meditation or in a practice, but most of the time I'm living my truth in the reality that says, this is me, this is my body, this is where I am, I'm in the physical 3D dimension. But I'm not at the same time. And yet holding those two perspectives is definitely part of what the Hanged Man calls for. It's calling for a real acceptance of our duality. Now I just stepped into a very esoteric version of that duality. But if we were to bring that down to earth and say, okay, well, let's just look at what we think is right and wrong. Well, it's right to do this, it's definitely wrong to do that. Gosh, these are opposite type of belief systems. You either believe in that or you believe in that. They both can't be right, you know. That would be a contradiction in ideas. That would be hypocrisy. Interestingly, this king is really good at embracing the opposites. He's really good at seeing the duality and recognizing the truth in both sides of the story. He's really good at understanding difference of perspective. This is where his flexibility is. He's very able to fly up and go, oh, from this level it looks like that. But if you go up here from this level, it looks completely different. And yet it's the same thing. It's the same thing described differently, spoken about differently, felt differently, and challenged on different sides of the fence. And yet it's the same thing we're looking at. He's very good at cutting to the truth. And when I say cutting to the truth is recognizing that the dualistic mind that always wants to jump on one side of the fence and judge the other side of the fence is not necessarily hypocritical, but is can just as easily stand on the other side and criticize what we feel is true. This is why this king is very powerful in knowledge and powerful in understanding. This is why he's really compassionate too, because he can see both sides of the story. In the physical world, this page is very much worried or fearful about what actually manifests in the world. But what manifests in the world is secondary to how we feel. It's secondary to what might manifest. That's secondary to what has manifested in the past and what will manifest in the future. What is manifesting right now is, when I say it's secondary, it's important. Definitely it's important. The present moment is what it's all about. But we don't have to judge the present moment outcome as the be-all and the end-all, because it might just be a stepping stone to something more beautiful. It might just be something disastrous that leads to something beautiful. It might just be something beautiful that leads to something disastrous. We don't need to be judgmental or afraid of the present moment manifestation and what we might be doing and what we might be choosing to be doing, if we can see the bigger picture, if we can stand on that high mountain where the king sits on his throne and overlook at the greater perspective of things. And the greater perspective of things is much bigger than what the details of what's going on in the moment. The greater perspective of life that the hangman teaches us is much bigger than just the tiny details of what we might get caught up into in our present moment reality. What we're doing right now definitely creates the future, but what is more important is the general energy that we are prepared to hold on to and the general acceptance to the life that we have and the life that we are living and the life that we are experiencing. And this king asks us to accept both sides of the story, to see the truth in opposing perspectives. And he asks us to say, hey, you choose what connects you to your heart. You choose the choices that are most aligned with heart and less limiting in general. I just saw in the first time in this card, actually just a minute ago, when I was looking at it, the figure is looking at the pentacle which is the lowest, and the pentacle which is related to the foot that's not on the ground, and the foot which is actually grounded, and the pentacle which is the highest on the other side, we're not paying attention to. And this is just symbolic to life in general, you know. And also there's two ships. There's one in the background and there's one on this massive wave in the foreground. So on one side it's a little bit out of balance, on one side it's a little bit higher vibration, and yet we tend to focus on the lower vibration in the physical world. And I think this is probably a survival story where where fearful instincts or fearful childlike instincts have taught us to pay attention to the negative, because if you don't, that's what can get you into real trouble, or that's what can cause you physical danger, emotional danger, mental danger. And so you pay attention to what's wrong in the world so that you can be prepared, so that you can deal with it sufficiently, so that you can not get surprised or caught out or get challenged or not die. And that survival instinct makes us a little bit more alert to that which is negative than that which is positive, that which is low vibration than that which is high vibration. And yet the king sits in this reading and says, yeah, I get it. That's an old fear. That's a childlike fear which we have. But the higher perspective of things that the hangman would love to be teaching us is that this lower dimensional reality is not what we think it is. It's not the most important. It's actually less important than you think. It's not the place where we need to be focused on completely. Otherwise we get caught up in the material manifestations and we forget about our inner connection. We forget about how we create these external manifestations with our inner higher vibrational connection. And if we want different outcomes, we have to vibrate differently on the inside. If we want a more beautiful manifestation in the world, then we have to be stubbornly focused on higher vibrational, heart-connected choices, heart-connected beliefs, emotional reactions and responses to the world. We need to be accepting. We need to be embracing. We need to acknowledge our fearful reactions. We need to acknowledge our doubts but not feed them. We need to recognize our negative ways of thinking, the belief programs that we have bought into and we feel are important but maybe are not. We need to recognize them and be willing to cut that out of our lives. We need to recognize those beliefs that actually help us, that are positively inspiring. We need to recognize those choices that it's not about the duality of, oh, is this the right choice? Or is this the right choice? But it's more like, hey, this is the right choice. Right here, there is only one choice. It might look like that, but it's really from here. It might look like this, but only if it comes through here. And the outside dynamics are less important than the inner feeling that we have. The outer world is a reflection of the inner attachments to certain vibrations which equal beliefs, certain vibrations which equal past emotional attachments which equal consequently into physical habits. Do we have the clarity of mind? The king asks us to be strict and yet flexible in the ideas that we are presenting to ourselves, the ideas that we are holding on to, the beliefs that we are fundamentally think is real. Because if you're really honest and you look at the world today, it's full of it. A lot of people are holding on to resentment in the name of being right. We're holding on to fear in the name of being right, and we'll hold on to doubting ourselves because we have the proof that we should doubt ourselves, and we'll be holding on to all sorts of weirdly surreal beliefs. And I call them surreal because once we step back from them, they're not helpful, they're not useful, They're not positive. They don't inspire us in any way. They don't give us any uplifting thing. They might connect us with other people thinking the same thing. They might make us feel, that we have a conspiracy family, or that we have a, that we feel joined to all those other people who hold the same dark beliefs, and we might feel connected in some negative habits with other people. We might feel that is rich in some way, but even that idea is a little bit twisted. Even that belief is a little bit dodgy. If we can't see both sides of the story, then we're lacking vision. If we can't understand that truths are naturally contradictory in nature and will always have a paradox, and that we can embrace that paradox, then we're probably missing some of the point. This does not mean that we don't have our own moral compass. This does not mean that our choices are not the best ones for us. But they don't... our choices are not about rejecting other people's choices. Our choices are not about trying to be better or more right than anybody else. Especially when that leads to conflict, resentment, rejection, or anything that leads to those things is not your truth, even though you might be telling yourself it is. But hang on a minute, didn't you just say that we're supposed to reject certain ideas? No, I didn't say you're supposed to reject them. I suppose you're supposed to acknowledge certain beliefs and drop them, cut them out of your life. And you might have to cut some things out of your life, not because it's wrong inherently, because at one time it served you, but because it's wrong for you where you are right now. That's a big difference. There's a big difference between naming something as outright wrong compared to naming something as not aligned with me right here, right now. That's different. Because at one time you might be allowed to and be expected to change your idea about what is right and wrong. And good for you if you can. And it might do a 180-degree flip. Might well do a 180-degree flip. We've done a few of them in the past. Why not more? So follow our hearts, but not with blind righteousness. Not with the intention of being right, because that's not the king's intention. His intention is to convey the truth of the moment, but his truth, not saying it's the truth, but saying that it's his truth, with a corresponding acceptance that somebody else's truth is just as valid. Hope this has been an interesting reading for you, a little bit longer than I thought, a little bit more blah blah, a bit of philosophy on the story, but anyway, love to hear your comments, and have a wonderful new moon.